we'll just wait until we get a thumbs up from you, Jared. It should be working. Well, that's not what I wanted. Okay, we're going. Well, I can't find it there, but you did, so. Oh, nice. Okay, all right. I think our ordinance requires that I don't know that it can be chaired remotely.
So,
No, just have somebody. Do we need a vote to do a chair pro tem, John?
Yeah, I think that's probably best. So, you guys want to arm wrestle or draw straws?
Mike's the next one, so he needs to get practice.
Oh boy! All right, so Mike, you'll go ahead and start, and then you'll ask for a vote on for chair pro tem where Paul's participating remotely.
Right.
And then we'll move right into the agenda item.
Are we up and moving?
We are up and rolling.
Great. Welcome to Iron County Commission this morning. Today is the 19th of September, 2023. We're here for a special meeting this morning to canvass the September 5th primary election. I would move, first of all, to appoint myself chair pro tem.
Bold move.
I would second that.
In Commissioner Cousins' absence.
And I would second
Was
that.
it second? It was moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Cutting to the chase, John.
You got it done, man. And Commissioner Cousins is participating, but telephonically.
Yes. We're going to start this morning with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. I'll go ahead and offer the opening invocation if Marilyn would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
You bet.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for the opportunity to meet this morning as a commission, to take part in this process that guarantees our freedoms and our say in government. Father, we're grateful for all the many blessings that we enjoy in Iron County and pray that thy Spirit will continue to be with us. We pray that Commissioner Cousins will be able to travel safely today from his endeavors. We're grateful for the moisture that thou continues to send us and the bounteous harvest that our agriculture folks are enjoying presently. Father, we're grateful again for all of our many blessings and ask thy Spirit to be with each and every one of us in the county. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We've only got one item on the agenda today, and that's the canvass of the September 5th, 2023 primary election. We'll turn the time over to our clerk, John Whitaker, to give us a report on the election.
Okay, great. Yes, I could probably do it from where I was. I expected a bigger crowd today. Okay, this is going to be longer than you're used to, but not a lot. I'm also, as you'll find out why in a little bit, I'm gonna actually go and present at Cedar and Parowan today, who are also canvassing. So I'm going to go through the PowerPoint, and then we're going to kind of jump back and forth on a few things here. So we had total ballots cast was 8,988. I had a few questions about what's the total turnout. Well, it's kind of hard to tell because there are different pots of voters. The CD2 is all the registered Republicans in Iron County, and of those, 7,705 voted, which was a 40.58% turnout. In Cedar, it was 5,067 votes with a 31.5% turnout. Parowan was 1,044 and 55.56. The election ran really smoothly. I am super grateful because, frankly, I wasn't able to be as much help this time because of all of our work with the jail stuff. And so Chanel and the staff just did remarkable. This was our first election with the new printer. We had no problems with them. They're incredibly thorough and have done a great job. One of the complaints I'd had over the years was no I voted stickers, and we had I voted stickers. A lot of people didn't realize they were there, so our next instruction sheet's going to have big arrows pointing to the I voted sticker. Now, of course, the women will wear them, the men won't, because men don't read instructions is the joke. So that being said, hopefully people will get their I voted stickers. So this was a deceptively complex election, and I've mentioned this kind of offline to the commissioners before, but I just want to state it in a public meeting. There weren't that many races, but in terms of election administration, and we're going to talk more about this as we go, this was probably the most complex election we may ever do, only because it involved not only different parties, but also inside and outside of municipalities. So we have, 61 precincts, but we had 93 ballot styles. And because you could be in Cedar City but not a Republican, therefore you get to vote only for the Cedar City race. But if you're inside of Cedar City and a Republican, you get both. If you're not a Republican outside of a municipality that doesn't either Cedar or Parowan, you didn't get a ballot at all. If you were unaffiliated but lived in Parowan, then you got to vote for the Parowan municipal race but not for the CD2. And so we had to make sure that every person got the right ballot. And so that was a very complicated part of the election, only because normally on even years, we don't have to worry about the inside and outside of the municipalities. And on odd years, we don't have to worry about party. But because of the resignation of Representative Stewart, that necessitated this special election for Congressional District 2, it kind of threw all that together. And so we would talk about, is it apples and oranges, or is it apples and oranges and basketballs? Like, it was deceptively complicated. So moving on. Normally we do these things, and we did them this time too. With every election, we do what's called a logic and accuracy test, and that was on August 10th. And basically, we put all the machines through their paces. We have test ballots that we know what the votes on them are, and we run those through and make sure that the results match what we have on the ballots. We have found errors in that before, but only because it's errors in the way we marked up the test deck. So, so far, and I talked to my colleagues around the state, and a lot of them are like, I can sleep better once I've done the logic and accuracy test, and I know that the results I get after the election are going to match the ballots. The legislature changed the rules this year. We had our election audit on September 11th, at least part of it. We're grateful Commissioner Blake came and participated in that. And why don't you tell us what we did during that, Mike?
So this year was a little bit different than last year, but I'm going to screw up the terminology, but
don't worry about it.
Basically, the lieutenant governor's office takes all of the ballots come in from Iron County, and they randomly pick batches Am I correct so far?
Yep.
So they randomly collect batches, and a batch is 100 ballots.
50 in Iron
50
County.
ballot. Okay. A batch is, it seemed like lots more.
Counties do, some counties do 50, some do 100, and some do 300.
Oh boy. So batches of 50 ballots. We took, and then you take that physical ballot and you compare it to the digitized version of that ballot. You compare.
I'll interject and say that's called the cast vote record.
The cast vote record. I knew there was a term for it, but so you verify that the physical ballot and the cast vote record are the same. You verify the precinct. You verify the actual votes cast.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
And that the image matches.
And the image matches.
Good.
So I took the paper.
Is that the signature?
No.
No.
So this is so it's a good question. So Mike's talking about the actual audit of batches as assigned to us by the Lieutenant Governor's office. We get the physical ballots, we pull them out before they're put away and sealed, and we check them against what the computer has. Whenever you tabulate a ballot, we're grateful. This wasn't the way before.
Which are the votes? That's what you're looking
So we're talking
at.
about the physical ballot, and whenever we tabulate a ballot, a couple things happen. And Mike was alluding to this. It takes a picture of the ballot first, and then it actually tabulates it. It knows where to look and tabulate. And so what we're checking for are multiple things. Mike hit on them. That the two images match, that the precinct is correct, right? And we're going to check a batch of 50, and all the precincts better line up, right? And we do that. And then we also check that the computer said that, there was a vote for Mickey Mouse, not Minnie, and it shows Mickey Mouse, not Minnie. And so those are the kind of the three things. We make sure that there's the right number of ballots, the right configuration as far as make sure all the precincts, all the right ballots are in that batch. We're talking about apples and apples, and then finally that the computer has tabulated it correctly. Thank you.
Yes.
What was your impression of that process?
I'm always interested in being involved in that process. It's kind of telling number one, there's no question that the ballots, that the physical ballots matched the cast vote record. There wasn't one hiccup. There's just zero discrepancy there. It's just interesting to see actual voting patterns.
Yeah.
When you look at.
Oh yeah.
Which has nothing to do
vote?
with the election, but
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see.
And you don't know who it is.
No, you don't know who it is.
Oh,
There's
no names on them.
There's no names. It's a blind ballot. It's just interesting to see how they vote for one candidate that's really really super opposed to other candidates, and it's kind of a knowledge of local politics. It's like you voted for these you voted for this guy in this race, which is completely opposed to what this person in this race.
Philosophically inconsistent, right? Yeah, no.
It's interesting to.
So if I'm honest, I was a little disappointed we didn't have more adjudicated ballots. I don't think we had any come up when we did and so that's one of the things.
Didn't we have one?
Did we have one?
We had one adjudicated ballot because of a mismark.
That's right. And so on that, do you remember what we saw with the adjudicated ballot? Remember we did it out of order because it was at the top of the stack? Yeah.
I just remember that we looked at it. We looked at it really closely. We looked at the reason why it was adjudicated. Yeah. There was a hesitation mark on a bubble.
Oh.
And then another bubble filled in.
Oh.
And so it became. It was. I think they just. And when I say hesitation mark, there was literally
mark,
just
yeah.
the pen touched it. There was like a little
Wow.
tiny mark on one bubble, but then there was another bubble
that
completely
flagged
filled
that.
in.
Wow.
And it flagged that.
Yeah.
So
So, and we have it look for overvotes or unclear marks, and this was identified as an unclear mark. One of the great things about the audit, and they moved it from post-election to during the election, they also require that someone from the Board of Canvassers is present. So Mike and I did the.
Was there other folks that had come in to help you with
Not
that?
this time. We have had in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah. We try to get people there. for as much consternation as there is, you would expect a crowd here today,
Yeah.
or during the logic and accuracy test, or during the audit, and it's just crickets. But these are important things. So the audit checks all those things. And what I was getting at with the adjudication was there's also a note that says it was adjudicated, and it has the initials of who amongst my staff adjudicated. Another part of the audit this year, and they've changed the law that went into effect in May, and that is rather than do a post-election signature audit, we're supposed to do a signature audit as we go. They've changed the rules on who can receive ballots is the term that we use, but that's basically opening up the ballot, or not opening up the ballot, but looking at the tab that has the affidavit where the voter has signed it, and checking against the signature on file. And we'll go through some of the statistics, but even this election we had some that did not match. We caught one husband signed for a wife, and
What do you call those folks? Or?
well, yeah, no, we had conversations with all those, and he fessed up, and we didn't send him a nasty letter. We kind of go through the process that we go through. We'll start with a nasty letter, or if it seems egregious, we'll have the attorney send a nasty letter, and then we'll actually turn him over for prosecution if we see him do it again. We don't normally have a repeat offender. They're like, oh, well, I signed for my dad. It's like, no, you can't do that. And honestly, I mean, I can't say that we're 100%, but we catch them. So, and so with the signature audit, the requirements this year are a little different. Those who receive those ballots, who perform that signature check, can't be doing any other tasks in the office. And then we're supposed to self-check, but we can't have someone who is checking in ballots do the audit of the ballots as they go. So we had this election, it happened to be Taylor and Brandy, and then Chanel and I, and let's be honest, mainly Chanel, did those checks throughout the day. And so there's kind of two things there. Whenever that we find a signature that's a little bit iffy, we kind of huddle anyway, and how does the O look? Is there B above the line? We've all had training, and we've all. I kind of talk. I remember Dr. Sanders when my wife was pregnant with Caleb, and he had the ultrasound thing, and he put the stuff on, and all of a sudden we're looking at a baby, and I'm like, that's amazing. And he's like, well, after a couple thousand, you get pretty good at it, and that's kind of the same analogy with signatures. Is look, we need to be, but we're good at our jobs, and we do a good job. And then finally, chain of custody. We've kind of naturally done this all along, but we also now have additional laws that require us. We have logs for every little thing. Like no one's ever alone with a ballot or a ballot box. So we have two of us take even empty ballot boxes to places. And then we log everyone who goes to the mail, everyone who collects ballots, and which ballot box. All the ballot boxes have seals and locks. All of the mail is accounted for, and each time we open a box, we also keep track of how many ballots were in that box as they come in, and that way we don't lose any chain of custody or lose any ballots. So VISTA is a program that we use, and I know I'm taking longer than usual today, but it is the Voter Information and State Tracking Application. We've used it for a while. It is sponsored and paid for by the state, and each of the counties access it, and that is the portal through which we do our voter roll maintenance. And I want to just talk a little bit about voter roll maintenance, because when you want to talk about secure elections, you basically want a couple of things to happen. You want everybody to vote that is eligible to vote, everybody to be able to vote, no one that isn't, right? And then you want to make sure everybody is registered at the right location, because like this election shows, where you are matters in terms of which races you should be able to vote for. And then as we come and go throughout the year, there are different deadlines. As we approach elections, we have to stop processing voter registrations at a certain point. And And then we rely heavily on our partners with the Division of Driver's License, with the Health Department for deaths, and with a system called ERIC, which has been much panned, and I just want to speak out in defense of this ERIC system, which is the Electronic Registration Information Center. I should grab some water. ERIC is a system which states use to tell each other when people have moved in and out. And it's a big deal, but it's a very big deal for counties that border other states. So we border Nevada. Now, fortunately, we don't have a situation like Kane County where you have Colorado City and Hilldale. And, I remember talking to the former clerk auditor down there, and she's like, we caught people all the time trying to register in both places, and we used, among other things, ERIC. It's an important system because we don't want everybody to be able to vote, but nobody should get two bites of the apple. That's election fraud. That's what we try to prevent. Vista is the program that we use. We have all of the voter registrations on file, and so an image of them as well. And so when John Whitaker turns in his ballot, then we check it. And so here's a let's see. Did I leave a letter opener out there? No. We'll do it the rough way. I had one with me. Okay. So the voter gets this ballot. And they open it, and inside are several things. Okay. This is a returned ballot from this election. They have their envelope, right? That's the return envelope. They have the instruction sheet and the all-important and kind of hard to notice,
Yeah.
I voted sticker.
Maybe we need a bigger sticker.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and there we go. I voted. So you have the instruction sheet and then the ballot. So the voter votes their ballot, and it goes in the envelope, and they sign their affidavit. Okay, they seal it closed, and I'm not going to do it just in interest of time. But what happens is, without removing it, we open up this affidavit, and it's kind of designed to peel off. Our old printer and I worked together to design it. This is a design that K&H has used on many millions of ballots, and allows the election officer to check that in. And so what happens is they open that up and they look at the signature, and they compare it to the voter registration on file. Now, there has been a lot said, and there are still many people around this country that believe in a bunch of fraud during the 2020 election. And part of what my message today is all the municipalities have these kind of securities. So I could dump 100,000 ballots in a ballot box, but they're never going to count because they have to match this. You'd have to have all kinds of stars align. All the style has to match. You'd have to match the signature. You'd have to, not have that person already voted, and you'd have to, do all those things to get it past us. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying we have a robust system, and it would be hard for things like the 2000 Mules movie or some of the things that were spoken of in Maricopa County or in Michigan to be possible. One of the great strengths of American elections, the American election system, is decentralization. You would have to really affect a big election, you would have to be able to fool over 3,000 people just like myself. Is it possible? I don't know, possibly, but I can tell you that we all have similarly robust systems. Is every elections officer perfect, or do they do a great job? Well, no, you have 3,000 of them. But could you slip something by all of them? Those are pretty long odds. So
does that come completely off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that for a sec.
Yeah.
So system-wise, Mike, we did batches, right?
Yes.
And so what happens is the affidavit goes one direction, and they get put in piles of 50 and stored for 22 months. The envelope goes its direction, and it's eventually sliced open. And we have added the precinct on there so that in a worst case scenario, we could try and rebuild a batch or something. But another objective that we have, which is fundamental, is ballot secrecy. I don't want you to feel any kind of intimidation about how you voted. And the way we do that is ballot secrecy, right? And so the tabs go one way, the affidavits, the envelopes go another way, and then the ballots go yet another way, right? And then they're all kept together in batches of 50 in Iron County. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, this is a good example. So this is a Cedar City 8 ballot, nonpartisan, which means they get to vote for city council, but they do not get to vote for the CD2 race because they're not a registered Republican, because the Republicans have a normally closed primary. Woo! I got pages to go, you guys. All right. Another thing that Vista helps us with is reconciliation during the election. We're going to talk a little bit more about this because in this election, we were not perfect here. We always strive for perfection. We do several things. As we're checking ballots in, we reconcile to the number of ballots that we have to what Vista says we've checked in as we go. Also, we reconcile on the tabulation part as we go. We were perfect overall, but we discovered that a few folks were given the incorrect ballot, which threw off the total vote count on each of the 3 different races that were on this one. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Now we're here. I finally got to what you're here to talk about. So because the CD2 is a U.S. Congress race, the canvass for this race needs to happen in the county commission meeting, and then all of the results from each of the counties in CD2 will actually send their results to the state, and the state compiles all of the canvass reports, which we're gonna work on in a minute, and all of the statistics, and that happens on election night, and ultimately after the canvass. And so, what we're doing today is a great big deal because this is the elected board of canvassers. Accepting or not the results of the canvass of the will of the people. Mike hit it on the head. It's fundamental to democracy and our freedoms. This is a very big deal. It's important that we do our job as best we can and that we're able to explain and justify everything that we do to the Board of Canvassers because it is on your signatures that the Lieutenant Governor will accept those results, and then we will ultimately elect a new congressman or woman. So the statistics are as follows, and these are the new ones. You'll be able to look at all these, but I'll read through them. There's a lot. Okay, so for this race, and again, apples, oranges, and basketballs, right? This is the basketball. So Congressional District 2 had 18,985 registered voters. In other words, everyone who is a registered Republican, active registered Republican in Iron County. Number of counted ballots by mail or by drop box was 7,503. Number of counted ballots by in-person was 189. The number of counted ballots counted returned electronically was 4. And we have a group of voters that's either UOCAVA or disability, and it's the Uniform Overseas something vote. It's what servicemen and women do, and they can actually, there's a carve-out in the law for us to email them a ballot or mail them a ballot. They can scan it and email it back, and they have to sign an affidavit saying we understand that our voter secrecy, because we'll actually see whose it was and what the ballot was. Normally, we don't do that. We also do that for just a few folks with disabilities. We really bend over backwards to try and make sure that everyone who is eligible to vote can vote. Number of ballots counted by provisional. And those are folks that come in on election day or during early voting, and they have a problem with their voter registration, or they do same-day registration, which next year will be a big deal for the presidential. So the total voter turnout with all those was 7,705. Does the total ballots counted match the number of voters given vote history in Vista? So let's talk about vote history, and then because the answer there is no, and we can talk about why. So I'm going to use the same PowerPoint for all three of the canvases today. The overall number of votes cast was perfect, and I visited with many of my colleagues, and it's very easy to get off by a couple. We were perfect overall. What we found was in the CD2, we were under by 3. In Cedar, we were over by 3. In Parowan, we were over by 1. And we kind of had a little discussion yesterday about, because we discovered this yesterday, well, why don't those add up? And it's because it's apples, oranges, and basketballs, right? Because you can have every iteration of all those possibilities. So how does a voter get credit in vote history in Vista? Okay, so that's a big mouthful, but basically, how do we know that Mike Blake voted? Well, he gets voter credit. Well, how does that happen? It's one of a couple of ways. One is when we check that ballot in, we say, oh, yep, the signature matched. Not only does the ballot and everything move on, but Mike gets voter credit for that election. And so Vista is keeping track of everybody that gets voter credit. And then if you come in person and vote in person and we sign you in on the poll pad, that gets back to Vista. And so it keeps track of all that. So for CD2, we had 7,708 in vote history, but only 7,705 ballots cast. And what we figure, and we were worried about this going in, is with 93 ballot styles, there were a couple of folks that ended up with the wrong ballot. Whether they be close to a precinct or whether they're given a nonpartisan instead of a partisan that didn't have that on there. There were a couple of different, we'll talk about a couple of the ways we thought that might have happened and some of the corrective action we're going to do. Cedar City was 5064 in vote history with 5067 ballots, and they were over by 3. And again, what we presume is there were a couple of folks that ended up with a Cedar City ballot that shouldn't have, regardless of the other race. Same with Parowan. We actually caught the Parowan one in process. A family came in and they were in the process of being given the wrong ballots, and Chanel caught the last one. It was a husband and wife, and caught the one but not the other after it had been tabulated. So we knew that was going to be off. And in every case, there was an incorrect ballot given. So what do we do to correct that? I think we talk about a couple of different ways that it happens first. One is poll worker training. Our poll workers are just amazing. And this was a hard election only because it's super easy to get the wrong ballot in someone's hand. And once you do that, all of this now looks wrong. It is wrong. Somebody voted for something that they shouldn't have been able to, or weren't able to vote for something that they should have been able to. Again, what's our goal? We want everybody that can vote to be able to vote, including on all the races. And so getting the right ballot in the right hand is important. One of the things, we talk about Kendall Allen a lot in here, but he created a precinct lookup tool for us. And it's a tool that they can use at the vote centers to be able to figure out what precinct someone lives in. A lot of this comes back to voter roll maintenance. We looked at one where they were just right on the line, but it would have changed what kind of ballot they would have gotten out in Cedar Valley. And there's a GIS element to the voter registration. Amongst all the other things that my deputies work on is making sure that the point that we put for the voter is exactly where it's supposed to be. And we don't talk about this a lot, but we've made great strides in the accuracy of the maps themselves. Folks like Kendall have helped us to have more accurate maps overall. And then another thing, do you remember when we did the precinct rebalancing this last year? One of the things that I can't say enough about Kendall is he cleaned stuff up. We had precinct lines that were on one side of the road or the other, and he made sure it was right on the center line of the road so that if you have a voter that's close, we don't accidentally put them in the wrong precinct. And we actually think that might have happened once on this election. We got it corrected, but there was the dot wasn't right on the roof, right? So when I say perfect voter roll maintenance, there's kind of a lot that goes into that. Are all the registrations correct? Are all the dead people off? Is every GPS point correct? And then we just take steps to eliminate human error. We do training before every election with our poll workers and with our staff. And we talk about the challenges we anticipate for each election. And we were worried about this very thing. And so we're like, just take your time. A lot of the times when poll workers are under a lot of pressure, like any of us, mistakes can happen, right? And so we kind of work on that, and it's like, it's okay if there's a line, we'll just work them one at a time. We talk about, like in this one, it's like there's multiple ballots, in each area, and you got to make sure the person has the right one in their hands. We look at the voter roll part. One thing that we've been really glad about was our new partner, K&H Printers, was perfect as far as we can tell. I think the one error that we caught that they made was our error, because it was an error. There's a phrase in computers that says garbage in, garbage out. And we had a person in the wrong precinct, Now, that's one person out of 30,000. It would be naive to think that we're perfect, right? We're not. And when people want to get after us and come after me about elections, I think I can't even have the conversation with them until we kind of go through some of these things. And then I get to this point, which is, it's naive to think that we'd be perfect, but what we strive for is a robust process with continual process improvement. Let's see. Oh, good. So that being said, and I didn't get a chance to put graphics and stuff on it. I was kind of hustling this morning, but that being said, here are the Canvas statistics, which we now have to include as part of the Canvas. Here is the signature page for the Canvas, and Commissioner Cousins, I'll make sure you get a chance to sign this if it gets voted, if it gets approved. There was just the one race. Again, for this race, there was 40.58% turnout with 7,705 ballots cast. Celeste Malloy had 3,993, or 52% of the vote. Becky Edwards had 1,393, and Bruce Huff had 2,225 ballots cast for him. The canvas, again, is what gets transmitted to the state. It is signed by the Board of Canvassers and by the election officer. And we now include, as part of that, this page of the statistics, which are prescribed by law. We have this is the summary report, and then we also have a precinct report. And I just want to note that, and I'm sorry, I'm wearing you out, but this year I decided to not send out the precinct report until now. And that's because when we did our precinct rebalancing, some of those precincts we anticipated a lot of growth, and it's normally not a big deal. But there are some of those precincts that are quite small in Cedar because we anticipate the annexation boundary for Cedar to grow. I think Cedar 21 has just like 40 registered voters in it, 21 won, but we combine those for like the caucus night and things like that. They're together. Even though the annexation line runs through it, what we do is we project those, we call them sub-precincts, out to the annexation declaration line that the cities have. So the cities say, we're going to go this far and no farther with our growth. And they update that every so often. And so, like in Cedar City 21, the number of voters in the city is actually fairly small. It's small enough that I didn't want, one of the things that we avoid is, again, for that ballot secrecy, we don't want to be able to tell how any one person voted. So because it was quite small, I opted to just not share that until today, because now all of the ballots are tabulated and cast and the canvass period is over. So any questions after all of that? Do I need to wake you back up?
Just for the record, it seems like every time when we do this canvas, we have a Forest Service meeting, and that was the reason why myself and Commissioner Cousins was not at canvas.
No, we appreciate it.
We
We know you were double booked, and we're grateful that Mike did it. And yeah, that's no
yeah.
problem. And the law only requires that one member of the Board of Canvassers is present. So
Yeah.
we're always glad to have you, and certainly we hope for more. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, yeah, thank you.
I just want to give a shout out to your staff. I mean,
I agree.
the amount of the amount of training, the amount of policy, and the
New laws every year.
things that are governed by legislature. I mean, between vote. I mean, you're in charge of elections, but you also oversee passports. You also oversee collections
Marriage licenses.
for the landfill, marriage licenses. I mean,
Christian
it's
stuff.
you've really got to be. I mean, in that office, you've really got to be. I mean, a jack of all trades, and with a small amount of employees, with just a handful that have to be proficient in each one of those areas, it's really a testament to all of you guys.
They are remarkable, and I wanted to kind of save that till the end of my presentation, but I'm just so grateful for them and the hard work that they do. And we've got Taylor is leaving us, and she's got some things, family things, and we're looking to interview someone, and boy, I hope we can get someone of half her caliber. She's been great. Brandy, Chanel, I mean, Jeannie, we're grateful for all of them, and it is intense. It is difficult sometimes. There's a lot going on, a lot of requirements, a lot of training that they have to have. I've actually visited with Jen yesterday. I'm actually going to ask the commissioners to consider adding steps to. We right now we have deputy clerk and chief deputy, and Jen is writing up clerk 1, 2, and 3 so that there's opportunities for growth. One of the things that we've done amongst all the other training, the Lieutenant Governor's office gives training, especially as the run-up to elections. And I've spoken of this before, 20 of the 29 clerks in Utah are new since the year 2020. It is a rough spot to be in. Public service has gotten difficult as we've experienced the last 6 to 8 weeks, but elections is even more difficult with some of the lies and nuance and difficulties that are thrust upon people. So I'm grateful for the support of the Lieutenant Governor's office. One of those steps, that clerk 3, we're going to require them to have an actual election certificate. Very few people offer them, and I'm grateful I was actually able to be part of the development of a program through Weber State, which is accredited. Right now, only people that actually work in elections can do it. Jeannie and Chanel and myself have started that program, but it's an accredited certificate from Weber State. And we actually had our first round of graduates this last spring at UAC. I don't know if you guys remember that in that main session. But amongst the many trainings that we have to have Vista security training. We have to have multiple trainings on voter roll maintenance, what to do during election time. One of the things that we really felt empathy for were several of the new clerks this year with just that fear and trepidation in their eyes during our summer conference. And so we spent a lot of time talking about basics. There's a lot of nuance in elections. You hit it on the head. I've got 500 pages of code that in Title 20A that govern what we do with elections, and they can't leave it alone, right? They're listening to their constituents, the legislators, and they're trying to, and some of these things are good changes. Nearly every one of these changes cause more work for my office, right? And so it makes it increasingly difficult to keep people. But that's kind of the environment we live in. And when the legislative session is going, or even in the run up, like right now, we're having a meeting with all the clerks most Thursdays on just how to play defense with the legislature. And we leverage all of the influence that we can. I'm super grateful for our legislative delegation here that listen to me. I hope they continue to. But anyway, the horse is dead. I'll stop talking. Any other questions or comments?
Just thank you for all the work you do, because I know that we've put a lot of extra work because of the jail and all of that on top of all of your many, many roles. And I just want to tell you thanks for you and your staff.
Thank you.
Done a great job.
I really appreciate that, and I can't say how much I appreciate my staff. And you know, there's been a lot said about this jail thing, and I'm just going to opine that this is a very important project. It's not something that we can kick down the road any further, and not that you guys are taking it by the bull by the horns. But as we're discovering, this bull fights back, and we'll get it in a cow catcher and we'll get it on the ground. But it'll take us a minute, and I admire the commissioners and the courage you've all exhibited during this process, because it's, as Mike says, it sucked.
I don't know how else to put it.
We've all kind of noticed that we're swearing more than usual.
This conversation. We all need to wash our mouths out with soap.
Oh, goodness. Anyway, well, thank you. That's all I have for this. I think if you don't have any other questions, I think I can step back and
Hey, John,
consider that. Yes, Paul.
I am related to Jay Golden Kimball, so that's my excuse. I don't know what you guys are doing.
I'll take it.
Are we ready for a motion?
Absolutely.
I would move for approval on the canvass of the September 5th, 2023 primary election.
I'd second it.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Moved and seconded. Aye.
Aye.
And Paul, I think Mike may have beat you to the punch only because you're on the phone.
Because I didn't know if
Oh, you're good.
Second.
I'll bet my view during this commission meeting is a lot better than yours. Take a look at my pictures.
Oh yeah, I looked at
Ian,
your
I'm
picture.
already
It's
jealous.
awesome.
Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, it's pretty out here. So. Well, thanks for letting me participate remotely. That was good.
I'm
Appreciate it.
glad it
John.
worked out and the technology worked today. So
All right. Well, that was the only item on the agenda for today's meeting. I will declare the meeting closed.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Thank you. That is pretty out there. Wow.
This is a little piece of land out in the middle of